Hello, I'm Patrick Corson, and I am with NetSignNews anchor Jesse Rogers on our part of the segment that we call Talk About It. Hi, Jesse.
Hi,
How are
Patrick.
you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It has been, well, we would like to get your opinion about many different subjects that are facing deaf people today. And I would like to ask you what you think is one of the biggest problems that deaf people face today.
Well, there are quite a few issues that deaf people face today, but one that I would really like to focus on is education. And within education, teaching English compared to teaching sign language.
Oh, really?
Well, currently most deaf people go to school and their first language that's taught is English. But a deaf person's first natural language is not English, it's ASL. So while they're going to school and are being taught and learning how to learn English, they've never had a full background in teaching in their own language, ASL. So how can someone be expected to learn a second language if they've never had a complete opportunity to have a first language?
So, if I understand what you're saying, it's that you think that many of the deaf people there really don't have an opportunity to learn their own language.
Right, exactly. They're not given an opportunity to study their own language, to study ASL, what the grammatical parts are, the verbs, nouns, how are they different in English compared to ASL?
Wow. Would you say that that kind of grammar is really important when you're communicating? And also the point that many deaf are born to hearing people.
Yeah, that's right, about 90%, right.
Right. So if the hearing people are in charge in controlling that deaf child's education, will technology help that child? Because maybe the parents are too old, or they can't learn ASL, or...
Well, I think that it does need to start with the parents. I agree there. And the parents are the first exposure the child has to language. So it's possible that technology can help the parents maybe to learn ASL or to go to ASL classes. Maybe taking sign language online could be a benefit. For example, some parents live quite a distance and they don't have the availability to be able to go to sign language classes. Like you said, they're not able to have that opportunity. And so having having that opportunity to take the ASL class through the internet to help the parents be able to learn sign language and give their children that exposure, their deaf children the exposure to their own language. So when the children go to school, they're not having no language at all. That could be the most negative thing, is to have absolutely no language. Because you can't continue with the learning process without language. And the most important for deaf is ASL.
So how would you define ASL? And there's so many different people have different opinions on just exactly what is ASL. What is ASL?
Well, I agree. But ASL has its own grammatical structure. It has many studies that have been done and articles that have been printed and written, including all of the different grammatical things that are included, just like English. It does have nouns, it does have verbs, it does have action, adjectives, and most people that are deaf are never given the opportunity to formally learn what those mean. In English, they're taught what a noun is or what a verb is, but what does that mean? So I mean, all schools are required to teach these specific topics in English, and I think it should be the same for ASL. How can they know what this is or what ASL even means officially if it's never been taught and given the opportunity to learn formally what ASL is? What does it mean? What does it include?
I know from talking with many of my deaf friends through my own experiences, that normally deaf people don't like to read for enjoyment.
Yeah, it's true in my experience.
So that means that there's a whole world of books, for example, that's lost to the deaf. They'll never have an opportunity to read or live within that world. But if we change educational systems so that they have an opportunity to learn language early on, that might be helpful to help them to grow as adults with a better understanding of the world and maybe more opportunities for pleasure.
Yes, I agree that more education you have and the more language access that's given as a person grows up, it gives them more opportunities, more access for enjoying books and materials like that.
In education, in educational places, you have some parents, some people who say that the residential school is better than mainstreaming is better than residential school. Do you think that sometime in the future maybe both can combine and merge and work together as one unit?
Well, I think that should be the goal for both of them to be able to work together. When children are very young and start going to a residential school, yes, they're given access to their culture, to learn their own language, to interact with people that are very similar. Going to a mainstream school is a little different. They're learning, yes, how to socialize with the rest, quote unquote, the rest of the world. And so, I mean, they both have benefits and they both have some things that can be negative. I think the best opportunity would be to blend them both together so the children are giving exposure to both worlds. They have access to deaf culture and the language and the socialization, but then they also have the exposure to what life is going to be like when they become an adult. Will it be the same as when they were going to a residential school where they can freely associate with anybody? Will they need an interpreter? How do they use an interpreter? So maybe some of those, the positives and negatives on both sides, if they're combined, would provide the best possibility.
So the key, or the important thing, is to start education early, number one, regardless of whether it's in a residential setting or a mainstream school.
Right. It doesn't matter which one, as long as they start early. And at age 5, when someone arrives at school with no language, then it has no benefit to them. So it really does need to start at home with the parents as early as possible to give them exposure to language, and it's the more benefit the children will have.
Ah, very interesting. Well, you've heard Jesse's opinion. Do you have an opinion? We would really like to hear your opinion as well. So if you would like to comment or say something about this subject, please send us an email. Send it to the newsroom at NetSignNews.com. Right there. And it's possible that we'll read your email on the mail. I'd like to thank Jesse for joining me today, and thank you for joining us also. We'll see you next time on Talk About It. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.